Welcome to The Week Ahead, a podcast by SBM Intelligence. I'm your host, Veronica Pana Igube. Every Friday, we explore stories that are shaping our continent. President Tinubu has replaced Wale Edun with Taiwo Oyedele as finance minister, signaling a possible push for stronger fiscal reforms. Can Taiwo Oyedele deliver the fiscal reforms needed to strengthen investor confidence and drive economic growth in Nigeria? Nigeria has raised alarm over widespread flood risk across several states. While a recent rainstorm has caused another setback to the national power grid, worsening electricity disruption, what urgent steps can Nigeria take to strengthen infrastructure and disaster preparedness against warning climate related disruptions? Ivory Coast has recorded over 1 trillion CFA francs in tax revenue and has secured a new 330 billion CFA francs deal, signaling a strong fiscal performance and growing investor confidence in the country's economy. Can Ivory Coast sustain this fiscal momentum to drive long-term economic growth and regional competitiveness? Joining us today for further insights is David Olujumi, an analyst at SBM. Welcome, David, to the podcast.
Hi, Veronica. Thank you so much for having me. It's nice to be here.
It's nice to have you on the podcast. This is your first time on the podcast. We'll say welcome. And we hope to have you many more times as well. Let's go to our first story. Where we're seeing President Tinubu has taken kind of, will I say, decisive steps. He has changed the finance minister. I mean, this came as a shock to some people as well, but some people were expecting it, going to the kind of steps that the minister had also been taken. And Mr. Taiwo was just brought recently as the finance minister for state. So it's like, I mean, it's a shock to see that move from Minister of State to substantial minister. But why do you think this is happening? What are your thoughts on why it happened? And what does this signal about, the Tinubu-led administration? Do you think the president is taking these steps to make certain changes, decisive changes? And do you think it will strengthen confidence for investors? I know it's quite a mouthful as well, but yeah, just your thoughts on this recent developing story.
So for the change, it's been a long time coming because it's been in the news, it's been in the corridors of power. There's been this sentiment that Wale Edun has no longer been at the forefront or of the president's fiscal administration anymore. Since December last year, then in January this year, we had a point where that's Wale Edun, and the Minister for State at the time, that's Doris Uzoka Nite, they had a some form of clash that made it to the news. That particular clash they had made it such that the FAC meeting for that month of January could not hold. It had to be postponed. Then now analyzing it, it's like a relay race. So Wale Edun has basically driven Tinubu's fiscal policy measures till this point. I mean, bulk of what Tinubu will take credit for as his first term achievements are majorly economic reforms, from the tax reform to the exchange rate reform, to fiscal and monetary policy harmonization, in which the central bank makes a decision of not borrowing the federal government any more money by printing cash through ways and means. And the federal government in itself also acknowledges the fact that they have to look for alternative means of borrowing money. So there's that Wale Edun has been central and key to a lot of the things that Tinubu has done as president. However, news reports coming out of separate news agencies across Nigeria put it that the president and the minister had been National Assembly, went to the parliament, and were lamenting about the fact that they could not receive any capital allocation. For example, the Ministry of Health said, oh, for 2025, oh, that was last year. They said you've only been able to get 36 million naira out of their about 200 plus billion capital expenditure budget. So also the same thing we are seeing with the military, that the Nigerian Air Force, the Nigerian Army, the Nigerian Navy are also they're also revealing that they've been receiving fractions of their budget, capital expenditure budget. And the minister came out to say, so now there's this other episode. So one thing there is that we've established the fact that the minister has been central to the president's all of his plans and majority of his reforms, and especially when it comes to the economy of the country, considering the fact that he's the coordinating minister for the economy. Now we're also now shifting to the part that okay, relationships sometimes don't go as it ought to. Because being a minister for finance, you have to make tough decisions, you have to take tough decisions. One of our former minister for finances, that's Okonjo Iweala, she said something in an interview that when you're a minister for finance, you just be ready to be hated because you'll be disliked by your fellow ministers, you'll be disliked by the governors, you'll be disliked by even your president sometimes because you have to tell him there is no money. And that's the same situation that we're seeing playing out with Wale Edun, where according to news reports, there was no capital allocation there was no allocation to a lot of contractors upon whom the president wants to ride a upon whom the president wants to make a procession of victory. So he wants to make a procession of victory on the backs of contractors that are prosecuting contracts that he is going to use as campaign points across the country, such as roads, bridges, schools, and whatnot. And we have the Minister of Finance coming here to say there's no money to pay these contractors. And if you're familiar with Abuja, there's this report that across the Ministry of Finance, in the past few months, we've been having a swarm of contractors having to camp at the Ministry of Finance because they are trying to receive payments for the works they've done. That's one fact. So there's also the Chakuri factor that comes into play, considering his role as a quote confidant of the president. Okay, yeah. Yeah. Considering the fact that he is now in charge of Nigeria's largest single infrastructure project in history. That's the Lagos Calabar Coastal Road. That's costing about $12 billion, 15 trillion. And reports are making it out that the Minister for Finance has not really been on such a good term with him in the sense that they've not been able to pay that company, High Tech, the monies that accrue to them for the works they've done on either the Lagos Calabar Road or the Sokoto Badagry Road. Those are two of Nigeria. Those are two landmarks. And one thing while they're doing is the president sent um he sent a notice to the National Assembly to approve a $516 million request for the construction of the Sokoto Badagry Highway. So there's a number of factors that came into play, but one factor that is there is that as Minister for Finance, you would always be at loggerheads with your president. It's almost impossible for you to be in a situation where, oh, the Minister of Finance role is not a role that the president says jump and you respond with how high. You always have to weigh your options because the time will come you have your recurrent expenditure that never goes away. Staff salaries have to be paid. All the and we know one thing we know is that the federal government is the highest employer of labor in the country. So at some point you have to weigh your options. How much revenue are we generating? How much are we going to actually spend on staff salary, their pension, all of the things that are accrued to them. And one thing is you can't really what and wait, all right. Only tax spending. You tax income, you tax spending. If it's not going so good in the economy, you don't tax what is not, you don't tax the air. You don't, and now there are two factors here. We have shifted from an oil-based revenue system where oil was like the core focus or like the focal point. We're no longer that country anymore. Now oil makes up 30 to 40% of the federal government's revenue. Good. But even that 30 to 40%, it's no longer such that, oh, you can tell how much it's going to be or how much it is. No. NNPC there may be a lot of deductibles that will require that NNPC does not allocate as much money, especially since they became a commercial entity. We've been having a lot of that. Since they became a commercial entity, it's not the kind of situation where, oh, as the money is coming, it's going straight to the coffers of the federation. No. NNPC makes their money, then they decide how much they are going to give to the coffers of the federation. That's the situation we have now. They're an entity of their own that now pays that makes remittances to the federal government, but it's not under the control of the Minister of Petroleum anymore to say, okay, this is how much I want you guys to give now. No, it doesn't work that way. So the Minister for Finance, it's a very critical role that it's just that I don't want. It's not. It was not unexpected, at least considering news of what's been going on in that space. It's not unexpected that the removal of Wale Edun is coming now. However, it's a it's just a division. It was not foreseen from say 2023. It looked like they were always going to have a rosy relationship,
Hmm.
but reality has caught up with us right now. And on the side of okay,
No, 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 I'm listening. I just wanted to, I mean, you said something that you said, being a minister of finance, you will be loved and you would definitely be hated. More of hate on the side because your ministers wouldn't like you. You have to make tough decisions on the economy. And you quoted the former minister as well, Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala. But I also want to
yeah.
say, I want to ask you, what are your thoughts? Did you think that how would you rate, I think that's the word, how would you rate Wale Edun as a minister of finance? Do you think that he performed highly as well? Knowing that this is really, really a tough job to hold as well. And Mr. Taiwo Oyedele, who is stepping into his shoes right now, what do you think he'll be able to perform as much or would reach the expectation that the president has for him? Coming from sharing the tax reform, what are the likely steps we're going to see from him? Do you think that he's going to follow in the footsteps of Wale Edun, like the kind of policies that he pushed out, or do you see him taking a different route with the type of measures that he's going to take as minister?
So for Mr. Wale Edun, if I was going to, I will be as practical as I can be. I'll rate him as a I rate him average. in the sense that he was a normal Minister for Finance. Yes. Nothing out of the ordinary, nothing, not bad. He did not perform poorly. He was not poor, but he was not a spectacular run in that sense. Yeah, so now what I mean is in the sense that in his tenure as Minister for Finance, right? There was not so the normal things were done. It was left at that, basically. The normal things were done. Um, Salaries were paid. The most important job of the Minister for Finance is the fiscal coordination, implementation of the budget. Now, when I would say I don't want to go, if I was to give a very critical and very comprehensive review, I'll be very critical about the fact that in 2025, in 2024 to 2025, the country ran three separate budgets on one inflow. We ran from 2025, we ran 2025, we ran two. In 2024, it was three. So in 2024, there was the actual 2023 budget that was extended. There was a supplementary budget. Then there was the 2024 budget running concurrently at the same time on one revenue inflow. It's not normal. It was not supposed to be. Before Buhari left office, he implemented the system. So before Buhari, we had a system where our fiscal year in Nigeria used to run from September. I think it used to run from May till April of next year. That was the system that Obasanjo handed down and continued on till Jonathan, till Buhari's time. And one of the achievements, or in quotes, that Kemi Adeosun attributes as her big success as during a short stint as Minister for Finance is that we were able to regularize the country's budget to run within the normal circle, January to December. And it was supposed to be like that until Tinubu came into power. And the first year of being in power, it was a total everything. Now but this is April 23, and the federal government just signing its 2026 budget on 20th of April. It's a situation where now we have that situation. It taints, in my opinion, it taints Wale Edun's stint as the finance minister. However, I'll give him the part of policy coordination, especially with the CBN governor. Him and the CBN governor have been able to formulate some form of relationship that ensures that they are not at loggerheads, in the sense that ways and means is a common thing that the government will always ask for. We need to do this. Help us borrow some money. And when they want to borrow ways and means, they simply just print the money. Like not physically printing it, but they just generate money. It's a system that goes on and has gone on. It's a system that really was utilized in the days of Buhari. Previous governments used it. I think the first government to use it was Jonathan. Then Buhari took it to a notch higher. But the government came in, the CBN governor came in, and they were able to do that, where they were able to regularize how they are going to coordinate fiscal measures and monetary measures. So there was no when the CBN is being hawkish then there's also the part where the Minister for Finance is trying to stay on the good side and try and be expansionary, because when the CBN is being hawkish, one thing that affects is that it affects investment. Yes, there is reduced spending. Companies are not going to borrow as much. Meanwhile, to fill up that gap, what happens normally in the normal economic sense is that the government steps in and the government spends more. So when they say when we have a monetary contraction, we usually have a fiscal expansion. That's the system that's how we maintain equilibrium. So I give them that credit in the fact that throughout Wale Edun's tenure, we had like some of the largest budgets in his. But the problem remains the fact that even despite the large budget, um, so despite a large budget, we still we face the problem of revenue mobilization in the sense that okay, the naira was devalued and it helps the inflow of cash or but all of these things still does not one of the issues that we have and on this matter now it's more less of Wale Edun and more of the Minister for Budget. So we have a situation where even as the the leverage for so as the leverage keeps expanding, they keep expanding it even further. So for it, what I mean is when the naira went from 300, 400 to 1,005, you discover that the amount of revenue that will come in USD, when you translate it to naira, it's increased. So what the federal government will now do in the sense is that they will now expand their own budget or their own spending beyond the bands of this increased revenue. So in the end, they will still not be able to have a satisfactory budget implementation um, reports. So their budget implementation will still be between, for most of, at least for the 2 years now, we've had it under 60%, we've had it at 50%, something percent. And for 2025, it's even going to be worse. It's going to be as low as 40 something percent. It's a wonderful situation. That's what I would say, wonderful situation. And for Oyedele, he did a job of leading the charge on this tax law. That's a very hard job, one of the hardest jobs that he could have taken, or anybody could have taken. And he's shown his ability to be able to prosecute it. No matter what anybody wants to say about him, the reality is he took a tough job and he executed it. He executed it. As, for example, when they were about to launch it, they were talking about the fact that, oh, illegal taxes should be cut off, multiple taxation, there was so much buzz around the illegal taxes, multiple taxations, and all like that. But when you look at it in the end, you look at it that the law is just more of a recalibration of the existing law. It's just just an amendment to the existing law that we had in the past. So, say changes in corporate income tax is now from now not regressive, it's now on the progressive rate and things like that. But the reality is that Oyedele took a hard job and he did it. And like they say a moving man will always meet his luck. So he has shown the capacity in one part. He has to now show his capacity in another part. And to be very sincere, he's not there have been I don't want to use worse. He's a very qualified person, obviously. But even if people want to rate him on the basis of, okay, he's not had like extensive, big Wall Street portfolio or anything, there have been people with lesser credentials in the sense. I mean, before we had Wale Edun, we had Zainab Shamsuna Ahmed, who was the Minister for Finance under Buhari. She was just a lecturer. She became the Minister for Finance. So he's, I believe he's going to do what needs to be done in the sense that one thing that needs to be done, I was talking earlier, and I said one thing that being a Minister of Finance is less about your oratory skills, it's less about your ability to do financial valuation analysis, it's about your ability to keep everybody happy. Now you pay salaries and pay contractors at the same time. Revenue mobilization, how good are you at it?
some of these things are the factors that are now coming into play. So we see Taiwo Oyedele as a taxman. He's not in charge of the NRS, but the NRS is now reporting to him. But like I said, we don't tax what is not there. The point is, can they now work on fiscal policy to exchange or the people such that the more you spend, the more VAT you receive. That's how VAT works. The bigger people's income is, the bigger people's income are, the more um, personal income taxes that they pay. And the bigger revenue companies generate, the more, and the ability to generate revenue is a function of how much cash they can actually spend most of the time. How much cash they can get, the function of how much loans they can get. So in the end, we to drive growth most of the time need an expansionary system. So you're really able to now drive an expansionary system.
I-
Is yet we'll wait and see. Thank you. I think it's enough on this topic.
I know we have spent a lot of time talking about, this development. One thing which you said is that to sum that up, for the new finance minister is the reward for good work is, it's always more work as well. So let's move.
Small work.
It's more work. Yeah. Let's move quickly to our second story where Nigeria has raised alarm over widespread flood risk across several countries. What urgent steps do you think that Nigeria can take in order to strengthen our infrastructure and, to be more prepared for disasters such like this, like flooding, and to ensure that it doesn't like disrupt, the flow of the economy as well, and it also protects people's properties as well, lives and property.
So for the widespread flooding risk, the right now, as it is, there is no short-term solution to flooding risk because the solutions that you can develop for this kind of situations are solutions that are they are progressive, they are thought about, they are long-term solutions that bring long-term, they are long-term, we implement long-term solutions and it brings a long-term solution to a long-term problem, basically, in the sense that, so I'll use the Lagdo Dam example. I would always use the Lagdo Dam example. So we have a situation where when when the Cameroonian government releases their dams water in Cameroon, they release the Lagdo Dam. They do it yearly, but at some point, I think they do it in such a way that the volume of water released is always so much. So when they release Lagdo Dam, one thing that is always going to be affected is Nigeria. Nigeria is going to always that is so the Lagdo Dam basically dams water. Lagdo Dam is on the river Benue Basin, essentially. So Benue flows, I think, from Equatorial Guinea. I think it flows from Equatorial Guinea to Cameroon to Nigeria. That's the flow of the river. It's basic that when you have river basins like that, you're supposed to dam them at different points to control the flow of the water. That is normal human technology over time. But it's very sad that this is 2020. This is 2026. Nigeria has not a single dam on the river Benue Basin. All of the Benue Basin, there is no single dam on it. So what happens is that when the water is released in Cameroon, the water volume rises in Cameroon, it flows into Benue State, gets the confluence city, that's Kogi State, where the Niger meets the Benue. And the water volume essentially flows all the way down to And there's just from that simple action of releasing water like because Nigeria has failed to control the flow of water that is in its own borders. Nigeria has over 10,000 kilometers of river inland water basins. So we have just about 850 kilometers of coastline, right? We have about 10,000 kilometers. We have this situation where every year NIMET has to keep releasing a flood warning, flood warning. And the reason why they release the flood warning is because rain would always fall. Rain will always fall. It's a blessing that we have from God. Some countries pray for it to fall. They don't get the kind of rain we have. So rain falls and the volume of water in all our rivers increase and it becomes a flood situation. The river will flood and it will flood parts of the state. Where else do we have rivers again? River Niger will the volume of water in River Niger will increase and it will flood all of the communities that are on its basin. The situation we find ourselves in is a situation that we have so many challenges, but it's so funny that even the one of the river basin development, it's one that people don't necessarily even think about because when they think about floods, they always think about an act of God. They always think about it's a minister. I think there was a minister that said it's a climate change issue. It's a very it's not a very responsible way of looking at it because these are situations that have plagued mankind for many years. And mankind throughout history has always developed a system, a mode of dealing with it. All you have to do is to control the flow of water on your river basins. Control the flow of water by sometimes damming. Damming is and the funny thing about the damming thing is that how do we now let's bring it to the fact that we have 10,000 kilometers of, like I said, inland basins in our country, and yet we cannot generate 5,000 megawatts of electricity from hydrothermal hydroelectric dams. We don't have it. Ethiopia, one of our countries, one of our African contemporaries, built the um, Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam that produces about 6,000 megawatts of electricity. Just a single dam. That dam was built for $5 billion. That dam was built on the pathway of the River Nile that flows all the way from Uganda, that flows all the way from Ethiopia down to that flows all the way from Ethiopia down to Egypt. It's a very basic. It's something that can be done. We need to actually give you reason. Rivers are not a curse, they're a blessing. 70 to 80% of Egypt's economic activity takes place on the basin of the river Nile. All of Egypt's river basin, as Egypt is as big as Egypt is just 3,000 kilometers. What we're saying is that essentially the river Nile flows 3,000 kilometers through Egypt, and that river basin makes up for around 70 to. Okay. So in Egypt, the river Nile basically runs through 3,000 kilometers of their country. Like I said earlier, all of our river basins, when you add up all our rivers, they make up around 10,000 kilometers. We have about 10,000 kilometers of inland river basins in Nigeria compared to the 3,000. Yet, that 3,000 kilometer river basin makes up around 70 to 80% of economic activity, accounts for around 70 to 80% of economic activity in Egypt. A huge population of the country lives on that river basin. So we can also imagine what our river basins can do for us, the amount of factories that can be set up on our river basins, the amount of agricultural activities that can happen on our river basins. It's a lot of potential, but we also we need to have for the rivers. The rivers are listening to us as people. So we just need to figure out how, from say, if we set up a comprehensive plan from 2026 to 2027, we can set up a plan, the condition of our river basins, and make sure that they no longer serve as a point of building for us. That's all I have to say on the topic.
Thank you. Let's move over to our final story where we see Ivory Coast has recorded a huge tax revenue income, and they're also seeing a strong fiscal performance. Just one thought on this one. Can they sustain this fiscal momentum to drive long-term economic growth? What do you think are some of the factors that are contributing to this as well? Uh, just your thoughts on that.
So the sustainability of it, it's not for me to say, because um, taxes are a function of your economy. The amount of taxes you generate are a function of the kind of economy you have. So when things are good, government generates good taxes. When things are not going so good, there's a drop. There would always be a drop. But the number one factor that has contributed to this is digitization, the digitization of their tax administrative system. So Ivory Coast and Ghana have entered into a system where they've been very strong on digitization of their tax system. And we have to give them a lot of credit for Ivory Coast, considering the fact that they made 91% of their tax revenue targets. Now, this is public administration. Let's put in the fact that there would be a lot of leakages. Factors like leakages will happen, corruption. There's a lot of factors that many things could have made it go not as well. But this country has they've done something remarkable for their 33 million population. They've been able to generate taxes that's about the figure of it is about $2.7 billion for just one quarter. It's a huge, and like I said, the number one factor is basically digitization of their tax administration system. So another thing there is like one of the issues we face in our own country is the presence of multiple and illegal taxes. Multiple and illegal taxes is a big problem. So when you're in a system where you don't have to do all of that, there is more incentive to pay the taxes that exist. Not the single necessarily, but the normal taxes that exist. There's a lot of incentive to pay it. When you're in a situation where there's a lot of we have a lot of multiple taxes that cannot be traced, cannot you can't put a face to it. There's no incentive to really want to go ahead and say, oh, you want to contribute that much. So the sustainability of it is based on how well their economy performs. And let's not forget that they are not even in cocoa harvesting season. Cocoa harvesting season is still going to be till Q3, the third quarter of the year. So for them to be doing this volume of taxes in Q1, then we can watch out to see what it's going to be by the second half of the year. That's my response.
Thank you very much, David. It's such a pleasure having you on the podcast today. Thank you so much.
Same here, same here.
To all our listeners, this podcast is by SBM Intelligence. You can find us anywhere you find podcasts by searching SBM Intelligence. If you haven't already, be sure to subscribe, like, share with your friends so they can learn about what's happening on the African continent as well. We'd like to also hear from you, so please drop your comments in the comment section. If you want to learn more and get deeper insights into our work that we do at SBM, you can visit our website at sbmintel.com. Remember to connect with us on all our social media platforms. You can find us on X, Facebook, Blue Sky, LinkedIn at SBM Intelligence. Thank you so much for tuning in to the week ahead. Join us next Friday for more updates that are shaping the African continent.